Hello, 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 and good day. It's December 29. Welcome to the garden. Welcome to Garden Conversations with Rose. Today being the 29 tells us that within 2 days, 2025 will be no more. Most of us, or perhaps if I dare say all of us, like the idea of improvement and better things. So I want to suggest that for those of us who do cooking, even baking and drink making, know too well the importance of taste. Very often we have to do a little switching and changing in order for the perfect mix to come through so that our tasters will certainly enjoy the final product. And so, what I want to leave with you before we end 2025 are a few nuggets that may very well come in handy, particularly if the improvement that you had hoped for in 2025 didn't come through. We are hoping that when we present to you, they will make an impact and you will offer or give some consideration to our little nuggets. So, of course, I've termed it Switching the Mix in 2026. So, remember, we're talking about doing some navigation, some maneuvering, some changes in order to see some better results. So, we're looking at the letter S. And for the letter S in switch, we are saying to you that you should always set your tone. And so, as you set your tone, we need to remind you how important it is for the spiritual aspect to be intact. But as you set your tone, we need you to anchor yourself in sound biblical precepts. We also want you to think about applying the frog concept. What is the frog concept, you might ask? The frog concept is very simple. Fully rely on God. Fully rely on God. As a woman of faith, I have to emphasize that. And of course, you have to activate your own internal self worth and self value belief. Activate that belief and get into that mode of knowing that you are worthy. Of course, you're valuable. You're setting your tone, you're laying the foundation, you are providing the parameters, outlining the premise, giving the springboard from which you're going to thrust yourself in 2026. You're setting your tone. And of course, as you set your tone, you know that we live in a world where things don't always go as we want. So we need you, as you think of the letter W, to watch your environment. When you watch your environment, you have to remember that they are always curious onlookers, checking to see what's going on so they can go and tell their side. They're always disgusted passers-by who don't want to see what you're doing. They don't care. And of course, they're very impatient chauffeurs who, along the way, if you may be stumbling a bit, just want you to get along, get out of the way. We want you to remember that they exist and they are always lurking around to leech onto you. But even as they're there, we want you to also know that you can review your inner circle because, believe it or not, those persons may very well, for the present moment, be part of your circle. Those onlookers who are there just to go and tell about your stuff. So you need to review your inner circle. And then, once you have done that, we need you to remove everything that doesn't serve your plan or even your purpose. So you're doing a switch in the mix. You're doing a switching up the mix as you enter 2026. So what does the letter I have in store for you? We are telling you that even after you have done your review, we need you to institute and go further and sustain a feasible and attainable plan of action as you thrust toward your goal. When you're doing this institution of that plan, you've got to take time to craft your procedures and your methodology very, very carefully. Think closely and carefully about what you really want to achieve. You're switching the mix. You're not being casual. You're being very purposeful. And of course, you're going to trust yourself to work through the process. Remember, you had initially activated that self-belief and self-worth mode. So now you're trusting yourself. What does the letter T have to offer? So for the letter T, we want to tell you that, remember, you would have done your review. You are terminating all alliances, all connections, and even those beliefs that have the potential to sabotage your goals. You are switching the mix. So you are seeking out precise details. You are selecting exactly what makes the right fit. And then you're seasoning your moves, your movements with grit and a forthrightness. And of course, a zest that can push you forward as you switch the mix in 2026. Now we're thinking about the letter C. The letter C. The letter C tells you to connect with those viable sources and resources that align with your objectives. So you would have sorted your details, you would have made your selections, and you are well seasoned with grit and forthrightness. Now you may need to connect with viable sources, those sources that align themselves with your own objectives. And as you do that, or even before you do that, you, of course, must do an in-depth research. You do not want to choose the wrong type of resource, or even it may be the right resource that may not be needed at the particular time. So you've got to do your in-depth research. You've got to be bold in your approach as you are doing the research. And of course, you have to embrace the positives. And then, as you move along, for the letter H, can't ignore that one at all. Even if you're grounded in and anchored in your biblical principles and you're employing the frog moments, you have to recognize as well that your mental and emotional wellness are always going to be top priority. So make no apologies for self-care. Switch the mix. I have come to realize that within our setting in our society, the idea of hard work to the point of exhaustion and falling down on one's face and becoming ill in the process has been glamorized as the acceptable thing. There is no excuse for hard work. I believe in productivity and hard work. It's vital. It's important. But one must never work so hard as to exhaust himself or herself to the point of falling ill in the process. And I'm not talking about illness physically alone. I'm talking about mentally, emotionally. You must make time for yourself. Make no apologies about self-care. There's always got to be a balance. You've got to be also certain to utilize your boundaries, those boundaries that will bring you some peace of mind. And of course, as you go about your interactions and your choices and your review, In switching the mix, you will need to censor anything and everything that threaten to derail you. You have to do some serious censoring even after you have placed your boundaries. Some things for way of slipping in the side, getting in there, and you didn't notice. So remember, as we close off for 2025, we are saying to you, you may really want to consider switching the mix.